With Iain Dale, call 0345 6060 973.
9:33. Well, a review into the loan charge has been launched today following concerns over the size of liabilities owed by some people affected and their ability to pay tax owed in a reasonable time frame. First announced in 2016 by George Osborne, the loan charge was designed to tackle historical use of contrived tax avoidance schemes. Such schemes sought to avoid charges of income tax and national insurance by disguising remuneration as a form of non-taxable payment, typically a loan. Now, these schemes have existed since the mid-1990s and have been considered by the courts, and most people who've taken them out have been advised by professional accountants and they've been approved by HMRC. Now, the Chancellor herself was challenged on the loan charge when she appeared on this programme almost exactly a year ago, when she was still the Shadow Chancellor taking your calls.
The way that HMRC is pursuing this money is just not right. The government did a review, but it's clearly not good enough. And the way that people are being treated is not acceptable. You know, who are the real culprits here? It's the people who missold products.
Would you give a commitment to have an independent inquiry? Because the government's one, the Morse review, was effectively the government marking its own homework, a bit like the Post Office did.
We have called on the government to do that inquiry. We hope that it won't take as long as getting to the next Labour government.
But if it does?
But if it is, yeah, we will do that.
An independent review?
Yeah, we will do that review, but I hope that the government crack on.
Well, back in, I think it was August or September, the government announced there would be a new review. We all cheered. We thought, well, that was, I wouldn't say it's job done, but it was a very encouraging sign. Today, they've announced that review. I've kind of hinted at my opinion of this review, so I'll be very clear. I think it is a complete sham. It's not independent, and we'll find out why it's a sham from Greg Smith, chair of the All-Party Parliamentary Group on the Loan Charge and Taxpayer Fairness, who's Conservative MP for Mid Buckinghamshire. Greg, I don't want to lead you, but I mean, it is a sham, isn't it?
It's a total sham, Ian, because if you look at the terms of reference for this thing, it's not a review into, checks notes, the loan charge. It's actually something that's essentially saying we're going to have a look at everybody that has been caught up in the loan charge, the victims of the loan charge, I call them, because as you said in your introduction, they've virtually all been advised by professionals, accountants, signed off by HMRC, and then had this retrospective tax placed on them. The terms of reference just say, well, we're going to look at how well we can maybe just be slightly a little bit nicer to them than hitherto. And what we were calling for as an APPG was a full, proper inquiry into the legislation, into how it came about in the first place that we had a retrospective tax applied on things hitherto considered legal.
Not just retrospective, but retrospective over 20 years, which has never happened before.
Absolutely. It's an absolute absurdity. It's something that you really have to think very hard about how on earth that could ever come about. I mean, retrospective is bad enough. Retrospective over multiple decades is just ridiculous. And as the Chancellor said on your programme a year ago, the real villains here are the promoters, the people who actually sold these schemes in the first place. What does this so-called review say about those? Absolutely nothing. And that just underpins why this is just yet another piece of theatre from this government that isn't actually solving anything at all.
Isn't it more simple than that? Because James Murray, who is he the Financial Secretary to the Treasury? Anyway, he's a Treasury Minister. He trumpeted this independent review or this review when it was announced. And I remember texting him at the time, saying, well, well done you, sort of, because you're doing something that the last government didn't do. Their review was chaired by somebody who was, I think, either an ex-Treasury official or ex-HMRC. And what does this review? The chair of that is a former senior HMRC employee. So how can it possibly be independent? And the problem is that the civil servants have hoodwinked the minister. It's as simple as that, isn't it?
Yeah, it's going back to the Yes Minister script all over again. It's incredibly disappointing. You know what, Ian? Not long after the general election, those of us that survived from the Conservative side were all feeling a bit sore. And I had this random email coming in that James Murray wanted to see me in my capacity as the APPG chairman. And I went along and we actually had a great conversation. And I arranged for him to meet some of the victims of the loan charge over the summer, which was a really emotional meeting during summer recess where people really put their cards on the table in front of him and talked of the distress, the family breakdown, losing their homes, all sorts of horrendous things that were happening to people. And he looked moved by it. He looked like a man on a mission that was going to go away and do something. And then to get this at the end of that, it is just... disappointment doesn't do it justice. We needed that proper independent review that looked at this in the whole, that looked at the legislation, that looked at the promoters, that allowed the families of those that have committed suicide because of the pressures that the loan charge put on them to give evidence in public. That's not even allowed by this so-called review. It's a sham, it's devastating, and it's a real slap in the face for those that are still enduring real personal misery as a result of the way HMRC are pursuing them over this.
Well, I know you'll continue to fight the good fight. If there's anything I can do, I will absolutely be only too willing to help, because I've been involved in this ever since in this very studio. I questioned Mel Stride when he was in that position, and he didn't like it, I have to say. But I just think it's such an injustice. To me, it is on a par with the injustices faced by the sub-postmasters and sub-postmistresses. And I mean, I think I'm right in saying that at least 8 people have taken their own lives over this.
I'm really sorry to say that figure's 10, Ian, and those are the ones we know about. It's a real human tragedy, the way people have been pursued over this.
And that's why we must continue to fight it. Greg, thank you very much indeed. That's Greg Smith, Chair of the All-Party Parliamentary Group on the loan charge. If you think we're making a mountain out of a molehill, just do a simple Google search and look at the background to this. It is simply outrageous, and I'm ashamed that our government, and look, it was brought in under the last government, so I blame them far more than this government, but I was really disappointed to hear how this review is going to be carried out. But there we go. Right, back to your calls. We're talking